In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars blinked like cold sparks in a sea of black, the Valtari exploration frigate named Stellar Veil drifted silently through Sector Delta 9. The Valtari were an old and cautious race, known more for their diplomacy than bravery. Their ships were sleek, silver, and filled with advanced scanning tools. They avoided dangerous places, but this time something had called them in. A strange signal had been found, weak and repeating, coming from a place close to a dying pulsar. The location itself was already dangerous, with waves of radiation sweeping through space like tides. But the signal was not natural. It was a distress call, and it was not in any known language, Captain. Linvar, a soft-spoken Valtari with pale skin and 4 eyes, gave the order to move closer. Her crew obeyed, though many were nervous. No one liked being near a pulsar, and no one liked unknown signals. When they reached the source, the crew stared in silence. A massive ship floated ahead, dark and lifeless. Its surface was scorched in some places, twisted in others, as if it had gone through a storm of fire and ice. "That ship is not in our records," said the science officer, a thin Valtari named derelict. He sounded almost afraid. "And the material it's made of? It survived close to the pulsar. That's not possible." The Stellar Veil scanned the vessel again and again. The results made no sense. The ship was built with metals tougher than anything known, and its design was strange. It looked rough, handmade. Even, not like the smooth curves of other alien ships. "There is something else," derelict said. "There are signs of life support inside. Or at least there were." Captain Linvar frowned. "Anything alive now?" "No signs, but we should still be careful." They launched a drone to get closer. The drone sent back images of the ship's hull. There were scratches and dents, but also something else. Symbols, carvings, graffiti. One symbol was clear, a circle, with a small dot in the center, surrounded by lines. derelict looked at it and tilted his head. "That's not ours, but I think it might be human." The word hit the crew like a quiet wave. Humanity was still new in the galaxy. They came from a planet called Earth, rated as a Class 8 world, not especially dangerous. The humans had joined the wider galaxy only a few decades ago, and most species thought they were simple, slow, and soft. Could it be? Someone asked, "Could humans build a ship that can survive this?" "Impossible," said another. "They don't have the tech." But Captain Linvar was not so sure. "Prepare the boarding team." The team wore full suits, ready for radiation, fire, or worse. They entered the strange ship through a torn section of the hull. The lights were dead, and silence filled every hallway. It was like walking into a grave. They moved slowly, checking every corner. There were broken tools, signs of old fires, empty shells from weapons unknown. And then they saw the writing on one wall, written in thick black letters. "Harris crew. Safe. Do not enter engine room." Another message nearby. "EarthGov. Property of United Earth Navy." derelict froze, his voice shaking. "It is human. It really is." The deeper they went, the more they saw. Human-made food packs, clothing, even personal items like photos and wristwatches. Someone had lived here, not long ago, in what seemed to be the bridge. A cracked screen flickered to life as they entered. A video played. Though the sound was damaged, a man appeared, wearing a black jacket with a name tag. Captain Leo Harris. His face was tired, dirty, but his eyes were sharp. "We came here chasing something dangerous," the man said, voice broken. "By static, we didn't crash. We landed on purpose, the surface. It's a nightmare, but we held on." The screen turned black. The Valtari team looked at each other, fear and awe mixing in their expressions. "This ship. It came from a Class 15 death world," derelict whispered. "That's the only explanation." Class 15 was a term used for the most dangerous planets. No species had ever explored one and survived. The conditions were too harsh. Gravity that could crush bones, storms that melted metal, creatures that hunted even machines, and yet humans had been there. Captain Linvar spoke at last. Retrieve all logs and mark this ship for protected study. We must inform the Council. As the boarding team returned to the stellar veil, the human ship floated silently behind them, not dead, just sleeping, and far below. On the surface of the planet they had called Perdition, something old stirred in the dust, the Valtari thought. They had discovered a mystery they did not yet know. They had discovered a warning. The ship was old, battered, and silent. But inside its broken walls, the truth was loud. Back aboard the stellar veil, the Valtari crew watched the recovered footage again and again. Each time, it sent chills down their spines. Captain Leo Harris, a human, had spoken to them across time and silence. His message was not just about survival, it was a statement. We held on. The Valtari were a species that valued caution and wisdom, but even they could not ignore what they had seen. The markings, the rations, the graffiti, everything inside. That ship said one thing clearly. Humans had not only reached a Class 15 death world, they had stayed there. Captain Linver paced quietly across the command deck. Her 4 eyes blinked in slow thought. Prepare a deeper scan of the ship, she said. Focus on systems, living quarters, and the engine room. Derelict hesitated. Captain, the message said not to enter the engine room. I know, she replied. Which is why we're not going in. Just look from the outside. Something happened in there. Something worth hiding. The scans came back slowly. The engine room showed heavy shielding and strange energy signatures. Even without opening it, they could see strange cables that didn't match human designs, glowing faintly like veins under skin. They built something new in there, Derelict said, or found something they couldn't control. Meanwhile, the Stellar Veil's linguists worked on translating every piece of text found in the human ship. Most of it was simple, practical, but one passage found carved on the back of a metal panel stood out. We are the fire that refuses to die. Let the stars know our name. We are Earthborn. It was not a log or a note. It was a promise back in the crew lounge. Younger Valtari officers whispered about the humans. Some had never even met one. Their kind was still rare in the galaxy, often seen on trade ships or research stations. Friendly but distant. I thought they were just curious animals, said one. I heard they once made weapons that could crack moons, said another. No, said a quiet voice. They made stories. They made fire in the dark. Derelict heard them but said nothing. His thoughts were on the wall of the human bridge. There had been pictures there, faded and cracked, but still there. Photos of a crew. One showed a group of 5 humans in light armor. They were smiling, standing beside the ship before launch. Names were written under each: Captain Leo Harris, LT Nora Quinn, Chief Engineer Max Doyle, Comms Officer Riley Grant, and Medic Dana Lopez. They looked young, alive, full of purpose. The next image was different, the same 5, but older, tired, covered in dust and scars, standing in front of a cave entrance. One held a strange device, half-built, half-organic. They were changing. Derelict whispered, adapting, not just to the world, but to something deeper. He showed the image to Captain Linvar, who nodded slowly. Survival requires change. But humans don't just survive, they grow. Later, a small item recovered from the ship caused new excitement. A black device with a cracked screen and EarthGov markings. It was a personal log unit. After hours of repair, they unlocked a voice. Entry, Log 67, LT Nora Quinn reporting. We lost Max in the 3rd week. Engine core nearly went critical. Dana says the air's poisoning us slowly. Riley thinks the IS still active somewhere, but I don't know if it's helping or waiting. Harris won't sleep. He keeps looking out at the sky, like something's coming for us. We shouldn't have followed it here. The recording ended there. Captain Linver leaned back in her seat. They followed something that led them into hell. The idea shook everyone. Why would humans chase something into a Class 15 world? Was it war, curiosity, or something else? That night, Derelict stood in the observation dome. looking out at the ghostly glow of the dead ship still drifting in space. Its engines were silent, its guns cold, but it felt alive, like it was watching. He remembered something he had read about humans, an old quote from one of their thinkers. When you stare into the abyss stares back. The next day, new data arrived from deeper scans. One signal came from the lower hull, buried under twisted metal. It was weak, but still running, a beacon. This signal. "It's human," said the technician. "But it's not asking for help, it's repeating a name." "What name?" Linver asked. "Project Emberlight." The room went silent. Captain Linver looked at the others, her voice steady. "Contact the council. They need to know this wasn't an accident. The humans didn't just crash, they were sent." As the message was prepared, the stellar veil drifted beside the ghost ship in uneasy peace, and far away, in the heart of human space, a signal blinked quietly. On a forgotten console, the name Oathbound lit up in red, and someone began to listen. The screen blinked slowly, like a heartbeat, in the dark corner of the wrecked ship. Derelict watched it flicker, the light flashing across his face. The human log unit they recovered had more entries, deeper layers locked by time and damage, but with the right tools and care, the stories hidden inside were beginning to wake up. He sat alone in the stellar veil's archive bay, surrounded by screens and cables. No one else volunteered to listen to the dead. The next message began without warning, a static burst. Then the voice of Captain Leo Harris returned. Quieter this time. Log 91, Harris speaking. "This may be the last. Clear record. We're losing systems one by one. The II went silent 3 days ago. We still don't know if it's broken or just watching." He sounded calm, almost too calm. "The sky turned red last night. Not from fire, but something deeper. It's like the planet is waking up." Derelict leaned closer, eyes wide. "I know this will be found someday," Harris continued. "You'll ask why we came. The truth is, we didn't chase the AI, it called us." The log ended there. Derelict stood up slowly, the words echoing in his ears. "It called us." Back on the command deck, Captain Linvar listened to the playback with narrowed eyes. "We need to understand what that means. The AI wasn't rogue," Derelict said. "It wasn't fleeing, it was leading them to something." They all turned toward the derelict ship floating beside them, silent and waiting. Meanwhile, engineers from the stellar veil unlocked a sealed chamber aboard the human ship. Inside, they found a black panel covered in burns and claw marks. Beneath the panel was a smooth surface made of an unknown material, and etched into it, in deep cuts, were coordinates. Those numbers didn't point to Earth. They pointed deeper into the perdition system. "We need to go down," Captain Linver said. "We need to see what they saw." The crew didn't argue. They could feel it too, this pull, this quiet call from the planet below. It was madness, but it was the only way to understand. They prepared a small descent craft, built to resist high gravity and strong radiation. Derelict volunteered first, followed by 2 security officers and a drone operator named Milo. The ship was named the Ember Echo. As they descended, the world of perdition revealed itself. Black clouds swirled in layers, storms danced across mountains like fire snakes that cheat. Land was cracked and dry, glowing faintly with heat from beneath the surface. Giant shapes moved in the dust, too far to see clearly, but large enough to shake the ground. The Ember Echo landed near a cliffside where the coordinates pointed. There was no sound except for wind screaming across rocks. They stepped out slowly, every movement weighed down by gravity that pulled at their bones. But they pushed forward, following the signal. They found it hidden in a canyon, a second wreck. Smaller than the warship above, buried in the rocks. Its shape was strange, unlike any human or Voltari design. "This isn't one of theirs," Milo said. "This is something else." Inside the wreck, they found shattered metal, pulsing wires, and a core device still humming with life. The drone picked up soft patterns, not language, but rhythm. "It's like a heartbeat," Derelict whispered. The team worked quickly, downloading what data they could. A small screen lit up with a final message. Not from Harris, but from someone else, a Jew. Woman's voice, tired and hoarse. Baltiquin, last of the Oathbound crew, if anyone hears this. The eye was not alone. It was built to find things older than Earth, older than stars. We followed the signal because it matched something we weren't supposed to know. We weren't supposed to survive, but we did, and now I know. Why, if you can hear this, go home. Tell Earth to stop listening. This place remembers. And it's starting to wake up. The message ended with a soft click. Milo turned to Derelict, his voice shaking. That sounded like a warning. Derelict nodded. No, that was a message and we were meant to hear it. Back on the stellar veil, the Council message beacon was already transmitting everything they found. But in the cold dark of Sector Delta 9, something had changed. The human ship's lights blinked once more, not in failure in response. The heat pressed against the hull of the Ember Echo as it lifted off from Perdition's surface. No one spoke. Milo stared at the screen showing the cracked valley shrinking behind them. Derelict sat in silence, hands still shaking from what they had found. Above them, the stars were cold, but the planet beneath seemed to burn with memory. Back on the stellar veil, Captain Linvar listened to the report from the surface. A second crash site, Derelict said, overcomes. Not human, not Voltari, unknown origin. But the AI had been there. The signals matched perfectly. Linvar crossed her arms. And the last human crew member? Dead, Derelict replied. But she left a message. It was clear. They were sent to follow a signal, not to capture anything. They were chasing a discovery. One Earth may have already known about. The idea shook Linvar more than she let on. Humanity had always seemed reckless, eager, but mostly harmless. Now she wondered if their simplicity was only a mask. Inside the recovered logs, there were fragments that painted a darker picture. Project Emberlight, mentioned again and again. A name hidden beneath layers of code. A mission born in silence. Data from the Oathbound showed a timeline that shocked the crew. The ship hadn't crashed. It had landed on purpose, and it had stayed grounded for nearly 7 months. 7 months on a Class 15 death world. 7 months fighting storms, creatures, and radiation. 7 months surviving. They turned their ship into a mobile base, Derelict said, showing the modified floor plans. They reinforced the hull with native minerals, built turrets out of spare parts, and repurposed energy cells to create temporary shields. This wasn't just survival. It was war. They weren't waiting to be rescued. They were building a stronghold. They named it the Oathbound Bastion. One entry from Harris stood out from the rest. Perdition has rules, he had said. The land shifts in patterns. The creatures adapt too fast. The planet is alive, it watches. We stopped surviving the day we started fighting back. Now we're part of its story. Those words were burned into the minds of the Voltari crew. And then came the list, not of supplies, but of names, casualties, each followed by a date. Some crossed out with a note that said returned. Milo read the names aloud, each one cutting deeper. Loti, Nora Quinn. Declared dead on day 47. Seen again on day 53. Chief Max Doyle, lost in engine core collapse. Remains found near anomaly site. Comes Officer Riley Grant, presumed dead. Last voice log on day 88. Medic Dana Lopez, unconfirmed, status missing. They had fought for their lives, but they had also crossed a line. Something had happened to them. The files spoke of exposure to unknown radiation, of dreams that shared details no one remembered saying aloud, of whispers in their sleep and drawings. Hundreds of hand-sketched pages, each one showing a large structure buried beneath the surface. A spire, dark and broken, but always the same. The last image drawn by Harris was different. The spire was whole, and its eye was open. Captain Linvar held a meeting with her senior staff. These humans came here chasing something. She said, they stayed, they changed, and they built Earth. May have sent them for answers, but they found something older. Something still watching. We should leave, said one officer. Destroy the wreck, warn the Council, and never return. If we leave, Derelict said quietly, someone else will come, and they won't be ready. There was silence, then Milo added, they weren't just trying to survive perdition. They were trying to learn its language, and maybe teach it something in return. They weren't just victims, they were explorers and warriors. Linvar gave the order. Collect everything. Logs, artifacts, wreck fragments. We'll compile a full archive for the Council. But we won't destroy anything, not yet. We need to know what Project Emberlight was, and if there are more ships like the Oathbound, because if Earth sent one, they may have sent others. As the stellar veil moved away from the planet, its scanners still locked on the surface, the wreckage of the Oathbound glowed softly in the starlight. Its beacon still pulsed, not in distress, but in rhythm, like a message waiting for the right listener. And in the shadows of Perdition's canyons, the wind carried strange sounds, not just echoes, but voices, some human, some not. The message spread faster than light. By the time the stellar veil uploaded its report to the central relay in Valtari space, a dozen other species had already intercepted fragments of it. Unknown wreck, Class 15 Death World. Human presence confirmed. The halls of the Galactic Council, where peace had been carefully balanced for centuries. Panic rippled like a wave across polished floors and ancient walls. Humanity was not supposed to be here. They were new, still learning, still quiet. Or so everyone believed. The Silex delegation demanded a full inquiry, their long faces drawn tight. With fear, humans were not authorized to access Class 15 zones. They said, this is a violation of galactic safety law. The Venari, cautious and cold-blooded, submitted a motion to restrict all human travel until further notice. Even the calmest species, the Archelians, whispered to one another in their aquatic dialects, their voices bubbling with unease. They survived it, one said quietly. What kind of species survives that? The Valtari delegation tried to explain. They did not invade. They followed a signal. They encountered unknown tech. They built a base. They died trying to learn. But the truth was no longer enough. The idea of humans exploring Class 15 zones unsettled everyone, because if humans could survive there, what else could they do? In human space, EarthGov denied everything. A spokesperson appeared on the public broadcast stream, blinking calmly. We have no record of any mission called Project Emberlight. The ship Oathbound was lost in a warp anomaly decades ago. There is no official activity in Class 15 sectors. These are unfortunate rumors. But in the darker corners of the network, whistleblowers leaked files that told a different story. A name surfaced again and again, Commander Rachel Flynn, a veteran of Earth's secret exploration fleet, and the original designer of the Emberlight Protocol. Her face appeared in an unlisted video. Older now, eyes sharp, voice quiet. They sent us there to find it. They told us the signal was an old AI, but it wasn't. It was older, buried deeper than any system had ever dared to go. We went knowing we wouldn't come back, and when the Oathbound made it further than expected, they cut the line, they erased the mission. But you can't erase truth. Perdition is awake, and Earth needs to stop pretending it's not. The video went viral across galaxies. Beings who had never even heard of humanity before were now studying them, their planet, their technology, their history of war, exploration, and madness, their will to survive, and more importantly, their silence. If Earth had explored Class 15 death worlds before, what else had they found? On neutral stations and border worlds, whispers turned to suspicion. Human ships were scanned twice. Trade deals slowed down. Some species began pulling their citizens from Earth-allied territories. One ambassador from the Grellis Combine said it clearly. You fear the dark until you meet something that walks comfortably inside it. That is humanity now, and we do not know where their comfort ends. Back on the Stellar Veil, Captain Linvar reviewed new messages from Valtari High Command. You are ordered to stand down. No further investigation until Council authorization is complete. Return to neutral orbit. Let the diplomats handle this. But Linvar knew it was too late for silence. The truth had already spread, and on a deeper level. Something else had started. Derelict came to her that night, eyes wide, holding a cracked fragment of oathbound hull. There was more data inside the plating, he said. Hidden in the structure, encrypted in magnetic resonance. We found a list, not names, not places, but coordinates. Multiple Class 12 through Class 15 worlds, all marked as visited by humans years ago. Linvar took the list and stared at it. One of the planets was inside restricted Tharnian territory, another near a pulsar that the Council had labeled unstable, and one in Valtteri space. She looked at Derelict, her voice quiet. This wasn't their first mission. This was just the first one we noticed. In the outer rings of Earth-controlled space, a group of human ships went silent. No response, no pings, no trace. And then, a new signal appeared. Clear, sharp, coming from deep within Class 15 territory. A single word on loop, oathbound. The city lights of Earth shone like a field of stars. But beneath them, the truth burned far brighter. In a secure facility buried beneath the old Colorado mountain range, alarms were silent, but the tension was thick inside a darkened briefing chamber. Admiral Claire Monroe stood before a curved display showing dozens of red alerts. Leaked footage, Council outrage, unconfirmed Spire activity. The name Project Emberlight was now public knowledge. She turned to the few who remained in the room, each wearing EarthGov black. This was always going to happen, Monroe said. We just didn't expect them to find the Oathbound so soon. At the edge of the table, an older man with gray in his beard and shadows in his eyes leaned forward. Do we confirm or deny? Monroe shook her head. We delay as long as possible, but we prepare for the rest to wake up, because perdition was never the only one, and Oathbound wasn't the first ship we sent. The others in the room did not speak. They knew what that meant. In a quiet corridor several levels below, Commander Rachel Flynn walked alone. Her clearance had been revoked, her project disavowed. But she wasn't done, not yet. She entered a small lab where only one terminal remained active, a whisper of her voice triggered it. A soft glow filled the room, and then a voice replied, "Welcome back, Rachel. Do you want to resume the Emberlight directive?" She smiled faintly. Yes, and released the full record. They deserved to know. The file decrypted in seconds. A complete history of the mission. The real mission. It had started as a simple anomaly, a signal deep within space, repeating in a pattern older than human language. Old Earth satellites had picked it up first, but not as noise, as math. It was a blueprint. And it wasn't for a building. It was for a machine, one capable of seeing through gravity, of mapping not just space, but intention. Earth built it in secret. They tested it in orbit, and when they turned it toward the stars, it didn't point outward, it pointed back, at a planet with no name, a world later known only as Perdition. The Oathbound was born from that discovery. Not a warship, but a carrier of questions, with an AI designed to learn without limit, and a crew chosen not for obedience, but for their ability to see patterns. It was never about conquest, Rachel said softly. It was about connection, even if the thing on Perdition wasn't alive in the way we understand. It was still thinking, still watching, and maybe waiting, elsewhere. Across human colonies and allied stations, fragments of the leak spread like wildfire. People were divided. Some saw the humans as brave explorers pushing boundaries. Others saw them as fools waking sleeping gods. On a small civilian station orbiting Alpha Eridani, a young mechanic named Joe watched the video of LT Quinn, the desperation in her voice, the sadness, and then the courage. We weren't supposed to survive, but we did, and now I know why. If you can hear this, go home. Tell Earth to stop listening. This place remembers. And it's starting to wake up. Joe leaned back in her chair. If they woke something, maybe it needed to be woken. On the Council side, panic became politics. Species that had once ignored Earth now flooded it with demands for answers. Some wanted sanctions, others wanted alliances, a few wanted war. But Admiral Monroe met each threat with the same calm reply. We have explored nothing you weren't already ignoring. We have survived what you feared to even name, and we are still willing to share what we learned. But if you turn against us, no. That humanity does not break. We adapt, we endure, and we do not forget. Those words echoed longer than any weapon back on the stellar veil. Captain Linver received one final transmission before all human channels went dark. A single line of text. Perdition was only the beginning. The fire has spread. Project Emberlight is no longer a secret, it is a signal. Then silence, not broken, but waiting. A ripple passed through deep space near the Sol system. Sensors flared to life on automated platforms. Defense grids woke from standby. Something large had emerged from faster-than-light travel, but it wasn't a fleet. It was a single ship, one the galaxy thought lost. The Oathbound had returned. Every scanner that touched it stuttered. Its hull shimmered with new alloys, impossible geometries layered with patchwork human engineering. It moved with the confidence of something reborn. Not a ghost, but a survivor, Earth's orbital command demanded. Identification, a clear voice answered. This is Captain Elena Brooks of the Oathbound. We have returned from perdition, with knowledge and with warning. Admiral Monroe watched the transmission in silence, her hands clasped tightly. Brooks had been listed as dead, but here she was, alive, changed. The Council was informed within minutes. Their feeds were flooded with images of the ship, hull covered in symbols no one recognized. Its engines giving off radiation signatures that defied standard physics. Brooks appeared on the wide transmission channel, offered to all galactic parties. Her uniform was worn, her eyes sharp behind her. The bridge of the Oathbound looked like a cathedral of wires, metal and glowing strands. We were not just explorers, she said. We were students, and the world taught us. Perdition is not a planet, it is a gate. It leads to places not mapped by any species, to thoughts older than time. It showed us what happens when life becomes idea, and what happens when ideas choose to live. The galaxy listened, some with wonder, most with fear. We did not tame perdition, we earned its respect. It let us leave, and now we bring what we learned. Debates exploded across political councils. Some accused Earth of playing gods. Others begged for access to the new data. The Oathbound, now known as the Fireborn Oathbound, entered orbit around Mars and began offloading. Fragments collected from the planet's surface and from the alien wrecks hidden within. Brooks did not reveal everything. She couldn't. Some of it wasn't meant to be explained. Some of it had been felt, not learned. The crew of the Oathbound had changed, not visibly, but in the way they spoke, moved, understood each other without speaking. Some said the planet had rewired their thoughts. Others said they had simply evolved. Rachel Flynn met Brooks in person. Their embrace was long, quiet. No words were needed. They had both walked near the edge of something vast and survived. EarthGov authorized the creation of a new group, one that would not hide in shadows, the Fireborn, named in honor of those who survived perdition, made up of humans, Valtari volunteers, and even one Arkelian scientist who had studied the original transmission. Their mission was not military, it was exploratory, to map the places everyone else feared, to learn from death, worlds, and to offer help to species who might face similar threats. They would go where no one else dared, and they would carry fire, not to burn, but to light the dark. The Fireborn became both myth and message. Their emblem was simple, a flame rising from a circle of stars, with a single word below it, endure. On the stellar veil, Captain Linvar received an invitation. Not from the Council, but directly from the Fireborn. She accepted without hesitation, as the first Valtari to walk the halls of the Oathbound. She felt the air hum with memory, and something else, purpose. Brooks walked beside her. We didn't just survive the planet, we became something it understood. And now we understand ourselves better too. The galaxy feared us for what we endured. But maybe it should hope, Because we're willing to return, not as soldiers, as students and teachers, Linvar looked out across the stars. Then you won't be going alone. And so, with the galaxy holding its breath, the Fireborn launched its first mission, not to conquer, but to understand and to remind all species that even in places where light dies, some fires never go out. The Fireborn fleet launched without fanfare. No parades, no songs, just silence and purpose. 12 ships, 6 human, 3 Valtari, 2 from the Archelians, and 1 retrofitted vessel from a long-forgotten species that had vanished before recorded history. They weren't built for war. They weren't even fully uniform. But every ship bore the same emblem, the rising flame. Their destination was not a known planet. It was a point on the Emberlight map, a cold place beyond familiar stars, a dead world called Graith, Class 14, unscouted, unclaimed, and silent for millions of years, until now. Captain Elena Brooks stood at the helm of the Oathbound. No longer a broken warship, now something more. The interior had changed since its time on Perdition, not redesigned, evolved. Crystal filaments lined the conduits. Soft lights pulsed in rhythm with the ship's motion, as if it was breathing. The crew no longer questioned it. The ship had become part of them, and they of it. On board the Valtari vessel Horizon Lens, Captain Linvar watched the strange stars slip past. She had never felt so far from home, and never more certain she was where she belonged. Delek, now a senior xenolinguist, stood beside her. "We decoded more of the Spire data," he said quietly. "Graith may not just be another death world. It might be one of the first, a seed world where the signal began before it was copied, before it was buried." "You think it created Perdition?" she asked. "Or maybe Perdition came to it," Delek replied. The fleet dropped out of FTL together. Graith loomed ahead, gray, desolate, covered in sharp ridges and fractured glass-like plains. But signals immediately sparked across sensors, not random, not natural patterns the same as the first, but deeper, older. The ships entered orbit and deployed land teams on the surface. The crews found ruins buried under the ice, massive rings, etched with spirals that pulsed with light when touched. Riley Grant, once presumed lost on Perdition, now returned as a signal specialist. "Step forward. It's a network, not just tech. It's a mind or memory, not alive, but aware, and it remembers." U.S. They activated one of the rings using harmonics recorded from Perdition. The ground trembled softly. The sky above the ruins shimmered, and then something rose from beneath the ice. Not a creature, not a ship, but a structure, a library, built of light and shadow. Captain Brooks stepped into the glow with no hesitation. Inside, she saw no walls, only images, not from cameras, but from thoughts. The last days of a civilization that had long since vanished. They had built the first gates. They had learned how to speak to worlds, but they feared what they found, something that waited in places even their minds could not map. The message was clear. "We passed the flame to you, not because you are ready, but because you came anyway, and stayed. You endured. Now, carry it further, outside." Every Fireborn ship received the same pulse. Data streams, coordinates, lessons in code, warnings wrapped in songs, invitations shaped as riddles. The stars had become wider than anyone knew, and more dangerous, but also more full of meaning. The council debated for weeks. Some wanted the Fireborn recalled, others demanded to join, and some, quietly, began preparing their own secret fleets. But none could match what the Fireborn had become. They were not just ships, they were bridges. Between courage and caution, between death and discovery, between what had been feared and what must now be faced. Captain Brooks returned to her journal. That night, her hands steady, her words quiet. "We left Earth searching for answers. We found something better. A question that keeps growing, a path that does not end. We are the Fireborn, and we will light the way." And above the cold sky of Graith, Oathbound's flame burned brighter than ever, not to warn, but to welcome.